We've already had enough deaths on these motorways, and we know that they're avoidable.
Danger on the motorways.
I'm stuck in the middle of the M6. My car's broken down. Oh, shit. Hello? Hello?
Taking away the hard shoulder was meant to ease congestion, but dozens of people have been killed.
It's destroyed me in every way. It's destroyed my family.
The minister who approves smart motorways says they're dangerous.
There are people that have been killed and seriously injured on these roads, and it should never have happened.
That's a broken down car.
Yeah, it is. They should film that right away.
And the government tell us smart motorways need to be overhauled.
We absolutely have to have these as safe or safer than regular motorways, or we shouldn't have them at all.
Travel news for South Yorkshire and North Derbyshire.
It was a Friday, and on Fridays we always went to Costa for a Costa breakfast. That was our little ritual. He left me at 8 o'clock, kissed me goodbye, left Costa and drove past waving at me.
Claire Mercer had never heard of smart motorways, but one was about to change her life forever. 10 miles away, her husband, Jason, had just had a bump on the M1.
After a little while, I realised I'd had no messages. So I started messaging him. Didn't get any reply. Sent another message, didn't get any reply.
Jason and the other driver, Alexandru Magurnu, had pulled over to exchange details. This is the section. It's a smart motorway. The hard shoulder has been converted to an extra lane.
They don't look that different. There's still that lane there. It's still there. It's, you know, and just nobody knows how to use it.
Smart motorways are supposed to spot stationary vehicles and then close the lane. But no one spotted Jason or Alexandru. No one closed the lane.
We've got huge problems on the M1 at the moment near Sheffield. It's an accident, 3 vehicles involved, and they've had to close the carriageway in both directions.
As the 2 men stood by their vehicles, they were hit by a lorry. Both were killed.
I just turned and I could see 2 police uniforms through the door, and I just said, "The police are here." And I went to the door and I opened the door and I said, "Is he alive?" And one of them said, "Let's go inside." And I said, "Is he alive?" And my brain had just stopped. I wasn't being obstructive, but I just wasn't moving. And I just said, "Is he alive?" And he said, "No." So I just fell to the floor.
This is the bit of motorway where Jason and Alexandru were killed. And what is striking about it when you're here is there are so few lay-bys. They're called refuges, and they're miles apart. So when the 2 of them had their bump, there was nowhere for them to go. They couldn't get off the road, and they were so vulnerable. Because all they could do was stay in this lane, which used to be the hard shoulder, but it's now the inside lane. And if you park up here, that is very dangerous.
What have smart motorways done to your life?
Ruined it. Ruined it. Jason and I got together relatively later in life, and it never occurred to us that we weren't going to be together forever. I'm terrified that it's going to be a coach full of kids next.
Claire's story matters. Smart motorways have become important in keeping traffic moving on the crucial roads that connect our country. The plan is based on 1 motorway in the Midlands.
This is the M42, just south of Birmingham, and it's always a busy road, and it's very busy almost static sometimes during the rush hour. So the plan was to try and ease congestion. The idea was simple, to turn the hard shoulder into an extra lane. The smart motorway was born.
What they also offered was live control and more technology. Cameras to spot broken down vehicles, lane closures to keep people safe. The M42 was a success, so 200 miles were introduced in England with 300 more planned. They're now scattered across the busiest bits of our motorway network, but do drivers understand them?
Do you know what a smart motorway is?
I haven't got a clue, sorry.
You've just driven through one.
Great.
Variable speed, can be controlled, notify of accidents in advance, alternative routes, all that sort of stuff.
So if you see a red cross, what do?
Get out of that lane.
What is a smart motorway?
No idea.
You've just driven through one.
No, I know. I know that I can't go on a lane with a red cross. That's all I know about it. I think we're going to miss not having the hard shoulders.
Why?
Because it's a haven, a safe haven.
What would you do if you broke down?
I'd be in trouble. I wouldn't know what to do.
So what are we supposed to do if we break down on a smart motorway?
What we're going to do now is have a little scenario.
The AA thinks smart motorways are so dangerous, they're retraining their patrol officers.
You approach a car broken down in a live lane, lane 3 of a motorway. What do you do?
Right, okay.
Now, in this scenario, what I think I'd do is, obviously I can't stop, it's a live lane, but it's life in danger, so it's a 999 straight away.
Yeah. So they can close the whole motorway, can't they? They can have it all gridlocked here.
Yeah,
They can block the whole lot.
Yeah, it seems a sensible thing to do, especially if something's broken down in lane 3.
Yeah.
Roadside rescue companies are often the first to hear from drivers in trouble.
AA Emergency Service. Can I just confirm, are you on a motorway or are you in a safe place?
The lay-by, is it big enough and safe enough for one of our vehicles to attend?
I've listened to some of the calls from members that have broken down in that situation, and if they're in a live lane, they can't get out of the car on the left-hand side. You know, the advice is quite bleak. It's keep your seatbelt on, put your hazards on, put all the lights on you can, and dial 999. It is an emergency situation that we're putting people in.
There's no hard shoulder. I'm on the actual side of the M6, in a lane.
You're in a live lane?
Yes.
Okay.
Stephen Lark was stranded on a live lane too. He broke down on a motorway with no hard shoulder and was stuck there for half an hour.
It's the scariest time I've ever had in my life in a car was when I broke down on that night.
He could only get out of his car by stepping into the speeding traffic.
There was a small gap, so I was able to quickly jump out, slam the door, run around the back before I got taken out by a passing truck. And it's amazing how fast 50 miles an hour seems when you're standing really close to the road.
If you can't get out of the passenger side, the only escape is into the live lane. Look here on the inside lane, a car broken down and people on the motorway. The alternative is to stay inside the car, and that can be dangerous too.
I'm stuck in the middle of the M6. My car's broken down.
That's what the family in this 999 call decided to do.
Okay, whereabouts on the M6?
I'm on the left-hand lane. I've passed Knutsford. I'm going northbound. Got the hazards on. What else can I do? Because I've got a family of 5 in the car.
Okay, don't worry. And you say there's 5 people in the car?
Yeah, oh shit.
Hello? Hello?
This was their car, hit by a lorry at 50 miles an hour. Amazingly, they all survived.
It's just the most awful situation when you've broken down and your kids are in the back of the car and there's nothing you can do to protect your kids. I certainly believe smart motorways are a scandal because we've been saying from the outset they are dangerous, they're not fit for purpose.
So how did we end up with a system that seems so dangerous?
You assume that when you're told something and you're a minister, that it's going to be
in good faith.
I've come to meet Mike Penning. He was the Tory Transport Minister 10 years ago who agreed to expand the smart motorway network.
And the Highways Agency said to me, we use the technology that we've got, we can do this safely. And the evidence from the pilots showed that. So then we started to roll it out.
But on that first smart motorway, the M42, safe stopping areas were on average 600 metres apart. When the smart system was extended, those laybys were up to 2.5 miles apart.
That's a disgrace, isn't it? That you signed off on something that then wasn't delivered, and what was delivered is dangerous.
I agree. And that's why I'm sitting in front of this camera saying this to you now, that we need to do something about it now. And there are people, and I'm sure you'll be interviewing some people, that people have lost their loved ones. There are people that have been killed and seriously injured on these roads, and it should never have happened.
Highways England say the plans were approved by ministers. They say any death on our roads is one too many, and they're working to gather the facts about smart motorway safety. The new Transport Secretary has ordered a review.
When this system was trialled on the M42, they were 600 metres apart. When the network was rolled out, they're now 2.5 miles apart.
I think they are almost certainly, in some cases, too far apart. We must be guided by the facts. And so what I've asked through the stock take is to get all of the information together. Is it the case that if they are 600 metres apart, that is the optimum way to build a network?
The police, the AA, even the man who approved this system, Mike Penning, they all think it's crucial.
What I can tell you, pretty clear steer, I would say, is I think 2.5 miles is much too far apart. People need to be passing these every 60 seconds driving at a normal speed.
Problems on a smart motorway can happen at any time.
That's just a broken down car.
Yeah, it is. They should film that right away.
A car has broken down. There's no hard shoulder. There's nowhere for it to go.
He's sort of trapped. I'm approaching him. I'm kind of trapped. Can't get into this lane. To see it for myself, what can happen when a car breaks down on a smart motorway? It's kind of organised chaos because I've got to get past him. He's just got to hope that nobody crashes into him.
19,000 motorists a year get stuck in a live lane after breaking down on a smart motorway.
We have a car here now as we're travelling along in the hard shoulder. Well, there's no hard shoulder, he's in and just abandoned.
We asked the AA to film some of the incidents their patrol saw.
That is a perfect example of the ERAs, emergency refuge areas, are too far apart. Now, for that to be attended, there will need to be a lane closure put in place because there is no hard shoulder down there for it.
These are some of the incidents they recorded. Look at this truck in the inside lane. In front of it, a van has stopped with its hazards on, so the truck has to pull out sharply. There's no hard shoulder, and the next emergency stop is half a mile away. And it's already full, a lorry and a breakdown truck. Here, speed limits and red X's. A breakdown in lane 3 of a smart motorway.
There's a police car and a vehicle with a poor petrified driver stuck in a live lane. This is a smart motorway. If that police vehicle hadn't been there, well, we can't help it.
Watch this van about to appear on the right, only now realising a car ahead has stopped dead. Some near misses are terrifying. And this van on the left nearly hits a car with hazards on.
I just want to know from you to tell our viewers, if tomorrow morning they break down in a smart motorway, what should they do?
The advice is very clear. Stay in your car and wait for rescue. Unless you are on the near side lane and can get over the barrier. A lot of these accidents are happening after people have departed from their vehicle, or the fatal accidents were after people.
And are you comfortable with that as advice from the Transport Minister, that you would say, stay in your car and hope you don't get hit?
It's not my advice, it's the advice from both the police and the Highways Agency and others. But getting out of the car on a busy motorway is not the thing to do.
Staying in's not great either, is it?
So the simple answer is that you are best to stay put. That is the technical advice, it's the guidance that is given. What I want to do is make sure you don't end up having to stay there any longer than you need to, and that is what we're going to get to with the outcome of this review.
You do realise you can't stop here, can you? You're not allowed, are you?
The police have to deal with smart motorways every day. On the M1, this driver is blocking an emergency refuge. He stopped for a rest.
Your flip-flops are down here. Right.
There is a much more fundamental problem for the police. No hard shoulder means they struggle to get through to incidents.
The biggest issue we have in serious incidents is that physically getting there first. You've got to try and cut through 4 lanes of traffic where there's nowhere for them to move.
Some traffic cops are posting online footage and issuing their own smart motorway safety advice.
Please, if at all possible, do not stop if you have a flat tyre. Just keep rolling and get to an emergency refuge area.
And that is what this driver in the inside lane appears to be doing, getting to safety without a wheel. This footage is from a traffic officer's car in West Yorkshire. He's attending a breakdown in a live lane. It's clearly dangerous, so he gets out. But look at what happens.
They've got to stop, they've got to rethink, and they've got to look at the evidence that smart motorways are not the motorway system that was promised way back, and we've got to do something different.
Some smart motorways are even more dangerous because the hard shoulder can be switched on and off. So sometimes the inside lane is a safe place to stop, sometimes it's not. They're called dynamic hard shoulders.
There's quite often confusion about stretches of motorway when there's a so-called dynamic hard shoulder, that you can use the hard shoulder when it indicates that you can. So normally when it's congested, but when it's not congested, you shouldn't use it.
Highways England has already said they won't create more dynamic sections, but the Transport Secretary told Panorama he'd go further.
What about dynamic hard shoulders? I mean, that seems from the outside looking in as kind of madness.
I'm very unhappy about there being so many different types of motorway. I don't think we should continue with dynamic motorways and all-lane running and smart motorways. It's just too confusing.
Are you suggesting that that might go as part of your review?
Yeah, I mean, we've got...
Because, I mean, tomorrow people are on that dynamic motorway, aren't they?
To be clear, yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. We absolutely have to have these as safe or safer than regular motorways, or we shouldn't have them at all.
That decision to abandon dynamic sections has come too late for Mira Naran. Her son died on a dynamic stretch of the M6.
Dave was probably the most incredible person I'll ever know. He excelled at school, he loved his sports, but he also really enjoyed studying and learning about new things, the world. always very inquisitive.
This is the part of the M6 where the accident happened. It's elevated, so there's nowhere to go.
This is the inside lane now, and all you have next to you is a wall. So if you stop here, you are in trouble straight away.
At the time, Dev's brother Neil was critically ill in Birmingham Children's Hospital. Dev had been to see him and was on his way home with his granddad. On that dangerous section of the M6, their car stopped on the inside lane.
The motorway at the time was being used as a smarter motorway. So you had 4 lanes of live traffic and no hard shoulder.
The lorry driver who hit the car has agreed to talk for the first time. He doesn't want to be identified.
I was alerted to the fact that there was something wrong by the abruptness of the lorry in front of me going into lane 2, and the car was just sort of sat in front of me and it sort of zoomed up into me. And I believe if I'd have had another second, I wouldn't have had that impact that done all the damage.
The car had only been stopped for 45 seconds. Dev was killed and his granddad survived.
A serious crash on the M6 closed the motorway for several hours overnight. It happened just before 10 o'clock, although the road didn't...
So I walked back to the car, and I wish I hadn't, because there was a young boy in the back, and it was just terrible to see.
I got the phone call to say something bad has happened, and I just knew it was the worst. I knew it was the worst possible scenario, I guess. They brought Dev back to the Birmingham Children's Hospital as well. So I had both my boys, one fighting for his life still, and Dev just there. And I just kept saying, Dev, you can't leave me. You can't leave me alone. I can't do this without you. It wasn't right. I have 2 sons, one really sick, and the healthy one. The healthy one left me.
The reason the accident happened was because there was no hard shoulder on that motorway. Had there been a hard shoulder on that motorway, the car would have been sat on the hard shoulder. We would have just driven past and gone on our merry way.
What do you think about the lorry driver that hit the car?
I'm devastated that all of us have been put in this situation. Nobody woke up that morning intending for this to happen. He has to live with this for the rest of his life. That must be really hard for him as well.
There's another serious problem with smart motorways. The radar technology that's supposed to keep us alive by detecting stopped vehicles has only been installed on 2 sections of the M25. Everywhere else, stranded motorists have to hope they've been spotted or raise the alarm themselves.
The vast majority of smart motorways don't have this stop vehicle detection. And in those cases, we found from Highways England's own report that on average it took 17 minutes, 17, to spot the vehicle. They're then given 3 minutes to activate a sign, and then on average it took 17 minutes for that vehicle to be recovered. So basically, you're a sitting duck for more than half an hour.
And some of the key technology seems to be unreliable.
We put in a Freedom of Information request for one stretch of the M25. It revealed one warning sign was out of action for 336 days. There was also a shocking rise in near misses. What they've told us is in the 5 years before the hard shoulder was taken away, there were 72 near misses. In the 5 years after it became a smart motorway, there were 1,485 near misses. That's a 20-fold rise.
We were told that the technology behind smart motorways would be so advanced, it would detect obstructions, it would detect problems on the motorway instantaneously. We know that that technology is not there.
There's only radar on the M25. That's right, isn't it, Minister?
Yeah, I think there are a whole series of things that need to happen with
There's no
regard
radar
to...
there is on the rest of the system. It's not very smart.
So there's radar coming in, but I think it's too slow.
34 minutes it takes to get to you on average if you're sat on the motorway. So radar helps. I'm sorry to interrupt, Minister, but radar is not anywhere apart from the M25. And most of our viewers will drive on motorways where they think there's radar, they'll think there's technology, and there isn't.
If we're going to have smart motorways, then we have to have smart motorways which are safe, and in my view, they need to be safer than the conventional motorway, which, by the way, doesn't have, in large parts, any of this technology at all. So that's where we've got to get to, and I would not have launched this stock take if I didn't believe that, if I wasn't uncomfortable about what was happening and I want to fix it.
Panorama understands that radar will now be installed on all smart motorways within 3 years. And a number of new laybys will be added. But some say that's not enough.
We have now a highways officer. He's shut the road.
We've been given a report by an all-party group of MPs.
Their conclusion is pretty shocking. They say there should be no further rollout of smart motorways until more research is being carried out and the places themselves are just fundamentally safer.
The former minister who originally approved smart motorways has worked on the report with the Campaign for Safer Roadside Rescue and Recovery. He says smart motorways are dangerous without laybys every 800 metres.
They are endangering people's lives. I think that's the right thing to say. It's not scaremongering. They are endangering people's lives by not doing what they said on the tin and having smart motorways, because they're not smart.
Highways England say smart motorways are as safe as conventional motorways. But the Transport Secretary has told us the latest figures suggest 38 people have been killed in the last 5 years. Far more deaths than was previously known.
Let's recognise that roads are never going to be completely safe. 1,500 people die a year on our roads in total. About 38 people have lost their lives on smart motorways since 2015. But I want them to be the safest possible environment, and I'm convinced that there is more to be done to get there.
As things stand, another 300 miles of smart motorway will open in the next 5 years.
I'm afraid the time will come when there will be an absolutely catastrophic case. We've already had enough deaths on these motorways, and we know that they're avoidable.
There's a fatal flaw in the system that needs to be looked at, and those smart motorways need to be stopped. And we need to stop calling it a smart motorway in the first place.
Smart motorways looked like a clever idea. But right now, there's concern they're not safe enough. They're the motorways where a breakdown can kill you.